So this might be a little bit of wishful thinking, but I believe we are on the verge of the super team returning. Now, I'm not saying anything new. I've said it a bunch. Everyone has said it a bunch. The parity in the NBA is crazy right now, even though we have this one team in OKC that looks like they might be the new super team. They might be the new dominant dynasty that everyone's aiming for. That might be the case. And the Spurs really might be right behind them with Wemby, how good Dylan Harper looks, how great Stephon Castle looks. In year two, Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson looks great. The Spurs really might be right behind them, but we've never had this many middling teams in the NBA. And I actually feel like the better way to gauge that is looking at the bottom of the NBA. Usually we have even 5 or 6 teams that we could look at and say they're bad, they're kind of trying to be bad, they kind of looking toward the future. Right now, I believe there's only 3 teams we can say that about. I think the Utah Jazz, the Washington Wizards, and the Brooklyn Nets. I would say those are the only 3 teams being bad on purpose. I wouldn't even count the Hornets in that because really the Hornets probably thought they would be further along in their rebuild by now. They thought, LaMelo, Brandon Miller, Miles Bridges, they had Mark Williams. They probably thought they'd be better by now. So I'm not even going to count Charlotte as one of those teams that are trying to be bad. So what that means is you have more teams that are going to be disappointed. You have more teams on a road to nowhere, and more teams that might be looking to make changes, either to go all in or to bottom out and really change the fortunes of their franchise. And that's what makes me think we might be headed toward a lot more super teams. Maybe not a lot more because there's only so many great players to go around, but I think there's a lot of teams that are saying we can't win with our best player as our best player. And who knows what's actually true, right? I don't know. You probably don't know. They probably don't know. But what the parity does is make people feel like they're closer than they actually are, and at the same time make people feel like they're maybe further than they actually are, because you could be a 9 seed and really you were only 3 games away from being a 5 seed. But I feel like a couple teams right now, either this year or next year, are going to make that leap and say we can separate ourselves from the pack. And we have 2 very recent examples of teams making that move to go all in, but my fear is they made that move a year too early. You look at the New York Knicks, they traded 4 first-round picks for Mikal Bridges. They were kind of going all in. But we knew at the time Mikal's not the player you trade that for, so the Knicks aren't considered a super team. But if they would have waited and made that same exact deal for an actual all-star level player, we might be looking at the Knicks as a super team. I don't know what player let's say Jimmy Butler. Yeah, Jimmy Butler, because Jimmy Butler was available. And the Miami Heat are kind of like the perfect example of the middling team. But yeah, Jimmy Butler, whatever went wrong there, they decided they weren't going to go any further with Jimmy Butler as their best player. They trade Jimmy Butler. If the Knicks had Jalen Brunson, Cat, Jimmy Butler, OG, is that not super team-ish? Is that not in that realm? We just seen Jimmy Butler lead a team to an NBA Finals. I think that would be probably the second best team in the NBA if they had Jimmy Butler, but they spent all that on Mikal Bridges. They made their move a little bit too early. We might be seeing that with the Orlando Magic right now. Now it's different because I have Jalen Brunson a level above Paolo as a basketball player, but even if Paolo becomes that, they did the same deal as Mikal, but they did it with Desmond Bane. And of course, Jimmy Butler would not be a great fit in Orlando, but again, that type of player, that type of impact player, they could have got with those 4 first-round picks. Now, I thought Desmond Bane would be a much better fit than he has been so far, probably a coaching issue. He just played a game where he took 1 3 in a game, Desmond Bane. Anyway, my point is, in those situations, we were very, very close to having another super team, depending on how you feel about Paolo and Franz, but the idea of it, but they made their moves a little bit too early. Because now you look around the NBA and all these teams are deciding, or at least me personally, I'm deciding they're kind of going nowhere. So you look at even a team like the Pelicans, who were trying to be good this year, who traded their first-round pick this year. They're kind of going nowhere with Zion as their best player. I don't know what team is going to trade for Zion. I don't know what team Zion goes to and fits perfectly with the other co-stars, but a talent like Zion could end up being the 2nd or 3rd best player somewhere. I don't know where that is, but like these are the things that can happen. Anthony Davis. You would have hoped that Dallas realizes they are going nowhere with AD leading them to a championship, and that is what they're trying to do. They're trying to build a championship team around AD as their best player. They are going to realize that, then all of a sudden AD is going to be available. Maybe when Kyrie comes back, maybe he's going to be available to go be the 3rd best player somewhere. I think A couple of these teams are really going to push their chips all the way forward. And like I said, we just seen some do it. They just kind of did it for the wrong guys in Mikal Bridges and Desmond Bane. Another example, a couple years prior, is the 4 first-round picks Minnesota gave up for Rudy Gobert. Let me just list off a few names where I feel like this could apply and they could be on different teams very, very soon. I already brought up Zion. I keep bringing up Bam Adebayo, Trae Young, Ja Morant, LaMelo Ball, AD, Sabonis. And those are only like the names we are actively thinking about. We all know what's going on with Giannis. I didn't even want to mention him because he's a separate thing, but Giannis for sure. LeBron could be somewhere else next year. And like, these would have to be incredible offers. I don't think Devin Booker's going anywhere, but he could go somewhere. Jaylen Brown, I don't think he's going anywhere, but he could go somewhere. Like, these are all possibilities. We're focused on Ja Morant, but Jaren could go somewhere as well. There's the potential for Darius Garland. If they flame out, he could be on the move as well. All of these guys are not number one, top of the top players, but they're players where you put them as the third best player somewhere, we might be talking about a super team, and I feel like we're gonna see that happen. And of course, everybody's definition of a super team is a little bit different. Everyone always points to the Brooklyn Nets the first failed super team, right? With, KG and Paul Pierce. Something that people or history seems to forget is that Darren Williams was actually supposed to be the best player on that team, and him not being at that level anymore is really what went wrong there. I mean, Kevin Garnett was fully washed, right? That was a big problem, but Paul Pierce was fine. Brook Lopez was fine. Joe Johnson was fine. It was really Darren Williams who was supposed to be that guy, and, that didn't really work out. But two teams that I feel like we might see this with, one I already brought up with the Knicks, and I feel like if LeBron goes anywhere, I think it is the Knicks, and I think he kind of fills that Josh Hart role for the Knicks, kind of like people. How many times have we heard people say, imagine LeBron in the Draymond role, right? I think he can do that a little bit easier with the Knicks. With Cat and Brunson, he would still have a lot of playmaking opportunities. With Luka and Reeves, it's like, you really need to be in the Draymond role and not the LeBron role. Not that it can't work in LA. I'm excited to see what it looks like when they come back, but it was like this last year as well. If you look at the numbers with Luka and Austin, no LeBron, they're much better than the numbers with all three of them. We'll see what that looks like. But I would consider that a super team. It would probably have to be OG in return. I don't know why the Lakers would do, whatever, but LeBron, career ending in New York would kind of be cool, would kind of be a spectacle. I could see that happening, and I think Brunson, LeBron, Cat, Mikal Bridges probably still on the team. I think that's a super team. I think that's a super team. Whatever we're considering a super team. The other team is the Rockets, and if they get, I don't want to say desperate or cruel, or it's just business, right? But if they really decide we're going to move the $25 million of Fred VanVleet and try to go really get another star perimeter player, the name that comes to mind for me is LaMelo Ball. I think LaMelo would be a great fit on that team. Playing off of Şengün and Amin Thompson brings some point guard play as well. I think LaMelo is like, I've made so many videos about LaMelo. I think LaMelo is one of the more talented players in the NBA. I think he just needs to be put in a better situation. Obviously, the health is the biggest thing there, but is that not a super team? Amin Thompson, LaMelo, Kevin Durant, Şengün. It's not a super team right now because we don't think of Şengün and Thompson in that vein yet. But in a couple years, we might look back at that and say, oh, that was a super team. If not LaMelo, I think Zach LaVine is another player we could see there. If you've been around here, I'm not a big Zach LaVine guy, but that again would be a perfect fit. That off-ball scoring, playing off of Şengün and Amin Thompson, giving them that volume three-point shooter that they really need on this team, while also not getting in the way of the other guys. Zach LaVine would slide in perfectly there. That would be one hell of a team, though. Another team that just came to mind is the Denver Nuggets, and I don't know if you guys remember this, but last year there were real rumors about either Zach LaVine or Brandon Ingram ending up in Denver. Obviously, neither of those things happened. They end up sticking it out and going 7 with OKC, right? And then they decided to trade Michael Porter Jr. for Cam Johnson because that was supposed to be this big upgrade. That remains to be seen. I just felt like it was a lateral move. If anything, they get Bruce Brown. For Westbrook in that role, I felt like that was a lateral move. If anything, they pay Christian Brown though. So if they flame out this year, Christian Brown is making $21 million next year. And if they decide they need more scoring, they need more creation help for Jokic, which I believe they do, Christian Brown's $21 million is going to come into play. And you put Christian Brown $21 million with Zeke Naji $8 million, get around $30 million. I'm not sure what you're getting for that. It's probably not going to be a star level player enough to scream super team, right? But they already don't really have those players, right? Aaron Gordon, Jamal Murray don't scream super team, but if they can get another player in that similar range to those guys, I don't know why this player comes to mind, but, and this is going to sound crazy, but RJ Barrett. No, I don't believe RJ is the same level of player of an Aaron Gordon, and this is really not a super team conversation. It's more a Nuggets conversation, but I feel like he could be a good fit of being able to create a little bit, playing off of Jokic, and doing a little bit of everything on the court, which I feel like they need one more player that could just do more stuff. And I feel like the conversation around RJ Barrett's name would be different if he was in that role. I don't know why that was the first name that came to mind, but I like it. I like it. But that's not really a super team conversation. Back to a super team. And the other player I really feel like could make a super team, depending on where he might end up, is AD. Again, Giannis is his own separate thing. I'm really intrigued to see what happens in LA. Do they really go hunting for that star? Maybe that is Giannis in a crazy world. I don't know. We've seen crazier things happen, but yeah, AD, like, he makes so much money. Of course, I don't know who, where that would be. In my latest video about the Dallas Mavericks, I had the Clippers as a team that would really want AD. The Clippers are a team that's all in right now. They don't really have a future, really. And I brought up how their picks might be getting docked in the future depending on this investigation into Kawhi and aspiration. So maybe they would be incentivized to really get rid of their picks while they can, and maybe you could trade Zoo and John Collins and a bunch of picks for AD. I don't know if that's a smart deal. I think it's actually a smart deal for the Clippers just because they're built around Kawhi and James Harden, and their window is now. So trading for AD, I think it's kind of, it kind of is what it is, right? They've already made their bed with this team, so I feel like going all in is kind of worth it for them. But would you consider that a super team? Like, Kawhi is kind of past his prime, Harden obviously past his prime, AD might be past his prime. Maybe it's the new net situation. You got Chris Paul and Bradley Beal clearly past their primes as well, but I do think having AD would make the game easier for all of their guards, just giving them that outlet. But would you consider that a super team? Probably not. So I don't know what it's gonna be. I don't know who it's gonna be, where it's gonna be, but I feel like we're gonna look up very, very soon and we're gonna have a new super team in the NBA. Will it pan out? Probably not, because they usually don't pan out, but I think we're gonna see it very, very soon. There was reports today that Minnesota was checking in on the Ja Morant situation. I would stay far, far away from Ja Morant, but in that hypothetical, is that a super team? Probably not, because Ja Morant, as his name would make it a super team, but realistically, Ja Morant is not the same Ja Morant. And I wonder who that deal would be centered around if you're Minnesota. It can't be Rudy Gobert, right? They can't be thinking we're gonna build with Naz Reid as our starting center defensively. I just don't think that's gonna happen. Not that I'm opposed to moving on from Rudy Gobert, but if your goal is still to win this year and you don't get any real replacement at the 5, I don't love that. And you're adding a pretty bad defender in Ja Morant as well. It can't be Naz Reid. I don't think Memphis is doing that for Naz Reid. So it would have to be Julius Randle, right? A Julius Randle for Ja Morant swap, and I don't love that for Minnesota, but I think I would do that one instead of Rudy Gobert, which is kind of crazy, but I think there's more upside of having a point guard there and letting Jaden McDaniels and Naz Reid really operate as the forwards. I think there's more upside there. I don't know if it's going to work. Probably not going to work, but just because there was a report today that Minnesota is checking in on the Ja Morant situation, I doubt that happens. I think they're going to wait it out and try to get a Darius Garland or a Trae Young instead, which is what I would do. I might even look into trying to get Kobe White before I get Ja Morant if I'm Minnesota, considering the fit, considering the contract, all that. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm underestimating how much Ja Morant still has left. But whatever it is, Ja Morant shooting like 12% from 3 right now. I know that's not going to sustain, but like, there's clear problems with his game going forward. But let me know what you guys think overall. Do you think a super team is on the horizon, or are we just going to see this parity throughout the NBA for the next 4 or 5 years? I think some team is going to get froggy here and they're going to leap at the chance to try to get a super team. And as I said before, my best guess would be the Houston Rockets or the New York Knicks. We'll see going forward. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Please like, comment, subscribe. It will mean the world to me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm out. Peace.